Why, hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Voice of the Valleys yet again with your host with the jokes. And I don't know what other rhyme I'm going to come up with off the back of that. Anyway, just getting into it. Mr. George Cresswell, your friendly neighborhood far right thug, brings you all kinds of not actual misinformation, it would seem. Obviously, I've spoken at length how those who use terms like misinformation, disinformation, whatever it may be, usually, not always, but usually doing so to obfuscate from actual information that is legitimate, that is valid, but it just goes against what the message they want to put out is. And so they just throw the term misinformation on there. You know, think of the Russia-Trump collusion hoax, the Steele dossier, all of that stuff, everything that we were told, but all of this misinformation, or that we were told that was true information when it in fact was misinformation, right? So again, it's a term that's become highly weaponized and gets away from what people, or what we should be conveying when we say that term, which is that, no, this is false information, which is why personally, a little bit of a tangent, I just like saying this information is incorrect. If there is information that is not factually true, and therefore there is other information that would refute it that is true, you just say that it is factually incorrect. There's no way to get around that term then. So again, we have to be careful with the terms that we use and the way we describe things and all of these things, especially in Starmer's Britain. It's increasingly resembling more and more of a nanny North Korea totalitarian state, where we have now the online harms bill, I believe it was called. Yeah, online harms bill. Fantastic title. Online, relating to the internet, relating to speech, obviously. Harm, a completely subjective thing, and then obviously ratified into law. So again, just whatever the establishment or whatever the current in religious zealots that have the power in today's society decide is harmful, which in many instances we're seeing are things like testimony from rape gang survivors and stuff like that. Yeah, believe it or not, a testimony from a rape gang survivor, which was shared on X, was taken down under the new legislation, was prevented from being seen by the new legislation. In fact, just before I go into today's lead story, which is very, very concerning, especially if you live in the Peak District. This is the stuff in question. So let me see if I can find the actual thing, because we've got more to talk about this a little bit later on. So yeah, it says age restricted content. So the actual post that came under it, because somebody shared the screenshot of it. Here it is. So this is from the actual rape gang inquiry itself. The statement was, sorry changes nothing. The injuries inflicted on myself amounted to torture, and I was not the only one that this was happening to. Fizzy juice bottles filled with boiling water out of a kettle inserted inside you and shaken in order to inflict the maximum pain, degradation, and lifelong injuries. Facial and dental reconstruction required after being volley kicked in the face when you were incapable of completing that 20th blowjob of the night because they had forcibly poured just too much alcohol down your throat that day. Being raped so often, so forcibly, that your womb and cervix had to be cauterized in order to save your life. So this was shared by the actual rape gang inquiry being led by Rupert Lowe, shared with permission. So this is, again, on X, you can find it. But this is, if you try and find it, this is the image that Sammy Woodhouse shared when this was initially shared. Again, this shows you how evil the UK government truly is. Apologies that the arrow is stuck in the middle of the screen, ladies and gentlemen. There's nothing that I can do about it. But if you look on screen, if you're looking on screen, you'll be able to see this. I'll read it out for you as well. It's Sammy Woodhouse's X. It says absolutely heartbreaking and then a heartbreak emoji. And it says age-restricted graphic content. This content might not be appropriate for everyone. To view this media, you'll need to add your birth date to your profile. X also uses your age to show you more relevant content, including ads as explained in our privacy policy. Now, never used to see this prior to the online harms bill going into effect, but just so you can be aware of what, again, things now that are now being censored. And here you go, ladies and gentlemen. I'll put it up on screen for you again. This is the original. This is the original. So here you go. This is what was originally shared on July 29th. So you can see that it's the same post from Sammy. And that's the actual post in question. That's the actual post in question, the testimony that that was given on this post by this rape gang survivor. Makes you think all this is going on. Makes you think how many MPs seemingly can't be asked to turn up to Parliament to talk to these people, you know, to actually bring their stories forward. Makes you think, do they actually want the stories brought forward? No, of course they don't. Of course they don't. So what we're going into first now, ladies and gentlemen, though, we're going to be talking about some of the people that enabled these atrocities to happen, the people that carried out the atrocities, of course, because if you live in the Peak District, you do want to be on the lookout for something reported 2 days ago. So July 29th, radical Islamic cleric runs combat camp in Peak District. Quote-unquote spiritual warrior project is run by preacher who praised Hezbollah leader as one of the world's great freedom fighters. A radical Islamic cleric who has supported members of Hezbollah is running a summer camp that combines combat training with religious education in the Peak District this week. This might as well be a terror camp, an Islamic terror camp on British soil. When other thought leaders, or when other Muslim leaders in other parts of the world, particularly like the UAE and stuff like that, say that Britain is more of a hotbed for Islamic extremism than other predominantly Muslim countries like the UAE, for example, they are not lying. They are not lying. We have terror group affiliated combat camps now. Combat camps. Where they're using Venom gear. They're using Venom gear. You know, Venom, one of the sponsors of the UFC. I'm not saying Venom has anything to do with this, obviously, but quite clearly they're well funded. They have access to this stuff, right? They have access to high-level gear, right? Happening on our shores with the tacit endorsement of our government because they want to bring more and more over every single day. They want to bring more and more over every single day. This is our sign. If you don't need it any more signs, this is our sign. If you haven't done so already, you need to start preparing for war because it's coming to our shores. It's already here. It's already here. It's just the salvos haven't started yet in terms of actual combat, if you will, in terms of actual warfare. And it's blatantly clear which side our government is on. It's blatantly clear which side our government is on. They hate us. They hate you. They hate you, the person watching this, unless you're a foreigner or Muslim extremist, right? Because they're going to go back and eat them alive as well anyway. If you're just a regular British person, they hate you. They hate you. Your government hates you. So you need to start preparing for war, because this could be coming to you. This could be coming to you, and it could be coming to you if you live in Wales as well, as I'll speak about next. Sayed Hussein Maki, or Makke, however you say it, again, just as British as you and me, a London-born, I don't know if that's meant to say Shia or Sharia, Shia preacher and influencer, has mourned members of the Lebanese terror group, including a British friend who died fighting for Hezbollah. Again, with the way that the term British has been used to mean literally anything at this point. We spoke last time about the young woman, I believe it was a 28-year-old woman that got gang raped by three men. Sorry, I'm going to check my phone a minute. Gang raped by 3 men in Croatia. In a disgustingly torturous 2-hour ordeal. That they said, 3 Brits went and did this, and their names were Ali, Gejin, and something else, you know, again, just as British as you and me. And he also fought, this friend also fought for Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard called the IRGC. Earlier this year, his visit to Australia was revoked after Sky News reported that he had allegedly hailed Hassan Nasrallah, a Hezbollah leader killed in an Israeli airstrike last year, as one of the world's greatest freedom fighters. Here is a photo, ladies and gentlemen, from this article of Sayed, however you say his name, beside, I believe this is Hassan Nasrallah. Let me just make sure that I'm not getting this wrong. Oh no, it's a dead. If you think that he's joking around, here's a gentleman crouching next to the shrine of a dead Hezbollah soldier, Mohammed Balbaki. So this is not Hassan Nasrallah himself, but this is the guy that we're talking about that led this camp in the Peak District, crouching next to and mourning next to a picture of a Hezbollah soldier. You can see he's got the tea cloth on, he's got the lot, right? These Islamic terror groups that want to do harm to us as well, mind you. It's not just the Israelis that they have problems with or anything like that. It's not just Jews that they have problems with. They have problems with us as well. Okay, because they want to take over. These people do want to take over the entire world. Make no mistake about it. That's what their religion calls them to do. So this is happening now in the Peak District, right? All this is happening now in the Peak District in the name of multiculturalism and diversity. And this is what I mean. Every single thing's being done. You call me all of these different slurs and everything. I'm trying to warn you guys. I'm trying to warn you guys. Again, a lot of you who leave comments and stuff like that and like the video, you already know what's coming anyway. I appreciate it. And I appreciate you guys sharing it as well in the hope of just helping people understand the danger that we're in. Because be like, you know, the people that are calling names, calling slurs, all of these things, the isms, the phobes, right? All of these things, they do not understand the danger that they are in. And they think that they're actually ushering in a good thing. They think that they're ushering in a good thing. And, oh, wow, it's hella rain coming out there. It's hella rain coming out there. As we say, woe to those who call good evil and evil good. I'm just going to shut my window a sec. 2 seconds, ladies and gentlemen. All right, of course, I had to shut the window. My windowsill inside did end up getting a little bit wet, but it's not too bad. So, yeah, really, really coming down out there now. Anyway, so, as I was saying, hailing Hezbollah as one of the greatest freedom fighters, he also attended Nasrallah's funeral and celebrated the number of mourners as evidence that the quote-unquote resistance was alive and well. An investigation by the Jewish Chronicle found. The military wing of Hezbollah has been proscribed in the UK under counter-terror laws since 2008, and its political wing was banned in 2019. How's that going? How's that going, ladies and gentlemen? Seems to still be alive and well in the UK, because lawyers for Mr. Mackay said that he was not a member of and has not provided support to any prescribed organization. But he's just going and providing moral support to the fighters that, you know, want to destroy the state of Israel, want to kill all the Jews, all of this stuff, right? You know, the modern day Nazis, at least one form of them, right? At least one form of them. Wants to go and mourn them and show his moral support for them at the very least. The cleric is currently promoting a physical and Islamic training camp for young British men in the Peak District from July 30th, which started yesterday, to August 3rd, known as the Spiritual Warrior Project and held at Darwin Lake in Derbyshire, offers Olympic-level wrestling alongside religious education by a cleric. I'd love to know where they're getting the Olympic-level wrestling teaching from. I'm a little bit skeptical. I'm a little bit skeptical of that. The course is described as focusing on God-centric masculinity and man psychology. Applicants are asked how much they value discipline and brotherhood. Now, if anybody else, it's proof of the double standard for your liberal friends, ladies and gentlemen. If anybody else, if it was just a standard white British man that wanted to run a retreat focusing on God-centric masculinity, particularly a Christian one, let's say that, right? Let's say a Christian one, right? And focusing on man psychology, they'd be called a disgusting misogynist. They'd be called toxic. It's called toxic masculinity, all of this stuff, right? Because now we have a double standard in terms of what religions are acceptable and what's not, and who's allowed to espouse his values and who's not. When these guys do the exact same things, in many ways even worse. It's far more radical in terms of the religious teaching and in terms of what they're going to be teaching and stuff like that. The things that they want to do, it's fine when they do it. It's not toxic masculinity when they do it, because they are now seen as. This is why the massive psyop with regards to the oppressor-oppressed stuff has been so effective, because these people now want to do the most oppressive stuff that is being seen all across the world in many instances. You only got to look at areas of the world like Iran, like Tehran, and places like that, where women, if they let their hair down, all right, it's a massive act of protest. They take you to the jail and they're forcibly raped multiple times and beat up and all of these stuff, right? Khamenei, I believe it was, said, you know, virgins should be raped so that they don't go to heaven and stuff like that. Or women prisoners should be raped so they don't go to heaven, right? This is truly, truly disgusting stuff. But you say any of this stuff, right? You say any of this stuff. It's not toxic masculinity when they do it. They want to put God-centric masculinity as one of their prime teachings. It's not toxic masculinity when they do it. It's not going against feminist ideals when they do it, right? Because they're somehow fitting into the oppressed box just a regular, white British man going to the gym. I believe I covered a news article a couple of months ago coming out saying if you like being healthy and fit, you're now basically a far-right Nazi. A focus on physical fitness can be a sign of being far-right. Right? I wonder if they're going to say that about these guys here. Of course they're not. Because you never see a Guardian article about saying that these guys are, far-right extremists or anything like that. Potential material for the course says, brotherhood is to trust your comrades, to know that you and your mission go further together than you ever could do by yourselves. Spiritual warriors eat, live and breathe brotherhood. Speakers at the event include Sheikh Salman Zarour, a Sharia cleric who at a previous course is shown standing above a fire at nightfall, guiding young men to, quote, reflect on our destinies. Messiah complex much? Messiah complex much? An Instagram post shared by an account named Jafar Hamoud on October the 7th last year, so that would have been 2024, the first anniversary of the Hamas attacks in Israel, features Mr. Zarour with fellow students at seminary in Lebanon. The post is captured, War Nights, and states that victory is near. Now, it doesn't appear to be. It doesn't appear to be whatsoever. So again, as much credibility you want to put on these people with their ideas, but make no mistake, they believe them. They believe them with a zeal. They believe them with a zeal that is not seen in many other areas around the world at the moment. Because us in the Western world, we've allowed ourselves to get very comfortable, very fat, very laid back, very lazy, right? Thinking that nothing's going to happen. It is coming. It is coming. And make no mistake, whether you agree with I think the ideas that they have are laughable in the sense of they're untrue and stuff like that, obviously. But make no mistake, they are very extreme. They are very extreme in their belief of these ideas. And not only that, they are very zealous in bringing these ideas to the rest of the world by force. Okay, people want to say that Christians are evil if they so much as say that being in a same-sex union is sinful, for example, or something like that. Okay, at the very least, then they don't go try and converting these people. Not always. They have been, not always been good throughout history, not always good practicing Christians and stuff like that. But policy of conversion by the sword, not necessarily, not a Christian thing. Okay, not to stay back and let people run all over you either, as is laid out in John 2. When Jesus fashions a scourge of small cords and goes into the temple, hitting the merchants with the whip for turning his father's house into a house of merchandise, as he says, flipping over tables, all of this stuff, right? People forget that side. But conversion by the sword, not necessarily the thing to do, because it's actually a loving and peaceful religion for the rest of it. For all the stuff that Islam, again, woe to those who call good evil and evil good. Woe to those who call Islam a religion of peace and Christianity a religion of war. It is a war in a sense, but war against evil. War against evil more than anything. For that, in order, in most instances, to not let evil win, it does take love to do so. It does take love to do so. But love can manifest in many forms. It can manifest as telling people that things that they may not want to hear, but they need to hear because they're nonetheless true. They're nonetheless true. Sometimes entails hurting people's feelings, Sometimes does entail going into conflict because there are people that are not going to cease by any other means. All right, that's what the Crusades were all about. The Crusades were right and just. Okay, what anyone says about it. Not everything within it. I believe I'm not going to speak to this as if I'm any kind of authority on it, but I believe there was a group of it would have been Catholics who went off and persecuted some of their own brethren of the Orthodox and did some horrendous things. Some things you see flash up on your YouTube every now and again and stuff like that, like a YouTube short saying that, in the Crusades, this thing happened, this thing wasn't good. We understand why the Crusades happened, but this thing happened with these people. I believe they were Catholics that had already been excommunicated from the church, I believe, and then they went off and done these horrendous things to the Orthodox brothers and sisters. But again, I don't know that I don't know that fully. So again, in a perfect world, things like this would never happen. But obviously we don't live in a perfect world. But the reason why you should care about this, ladies and gentlemen, especially if you live in Wales, because it was something that broke yesterday afternoon, something flashed up on my X, and then a person who posted this actually put a screenshot of a councillor's response, which really, really should get the hairs on the back of your neck standing up and getting you concerned that this is now, especially if you live in an area like mine, this is now within an hour from you, that the person who posted this says he was hearing that data breach Afghans, so we're talking that Afghans that were fighters, alongside us, but not necessarily great people when we were over in Afghanistan, right? That I covered, I think, 1 or 2 episodes ago. And also now, as we're learning that are being airlifted over here with the data breach as well, literal Taliban, thousands of literal Taliban, are coming to the Holiday Inn Express at Cardiff Airport next week. And then in the comments, there was a post that clarified this from Councillor Samantha Campbell, and she says, quote, I need to clarify some points here. The Holiday Inn is currently planned to be used to house entitled persons from Afghanistan and their immediate families who have a right to live in the UK following their efforts in supporting the British forces. These people are considered vulnerable under the Taliban. Notice how, our people are not considered vulnerable for these people being in our country, mind you. With their culture and their customs that they're going to be bringing. You think they're going to leave their culture, customs, their religion at home? No, of course they're not. This will be on a short-term temporary basis until permanent accommodation is sorted around the country. So there we go. There you go. So that is the whole goal. That is the whole goal. I believe they call this Operation Scatter. I believe they call this. But here is a councillor admitting that, they're going to be housed here until we can find someone permanent in the country to settle them so that we can give them the right to vote, so that we can continue to increase the population by an unjust means to eradicate the Welsh people, because we don't want their votes anymore. We've betrayed them at every single turn. They can see that we've betrayed them at every single turn. We don't want their votes anymore. We want to outvote them so they don't have no rights, but also we want them to keep working themselves into the ground so that we can take their taxes off them, so that we can give to these foreigners, so that they'll hopefully keep voting for us, so that they don't eventually turn on us and kill us when the numbers get big enough. But of course they know that they're going to do that anyway. Or if they don't know that they're going to do that, they're dangerously naive and they shouldn't be in the position that they're in. There's zero reason, basically, ladies and gentlemen, why this should be happening. There's zero reason why this should be happening. And if Councillor Samantha Campbell in this instance can't see that, then she's in the wrong position. She's in the wrong position. Either that or she sees what she's doing is a good thing, in which case then that would make her evil, and then that would then also put her in the wrong position. Number one thing any person in a political office needs is a functioning moral compass. And so you want, literally, ever since I've been born, even potentially going back before that, we've seen nothing but people in political office that have drastically skewed and inverted political compasses, right? People who saw ways to profit, from rubbing the right nose in diversity, all of these things, by going to war in the Middle East unnecessarily when they knew it all from the start, so that then they would have a massive plan to resettle people that were affected, and then rub our noses in diversity and do all of this stuff, right? So they had a reason to throw open the borders and all of this stuff, right? They knew they were in bed with the World Economic Forum and the United Nations and all of these things, and wanted to enact replacement migration and a one-party state with no freedom. You will own nothing, be happy, no privacy, like something out of China, right? The China is the blueprint. China is the blueprint for the rest of the world in these people's eyes. And currently, this is how much danger we are in. Wales is the blueprint for the rest of the UK, because we are the furthest along in this regard. So that's why we really, really need to start pushing back. We're running out of time. We've basically run out of time. And you only need to think about how much your communities have changed, especially the cities, especially cities like Cardiff and Swansea, places like that, how much they've changed in literally the last few months to few years, right? They're now in Cardiff, in areas of Cardiff, you have mosques blaring out prayer calls 5 times a day, from 5 in the morning till whatever time it is at night, right? In a supposedly Western secular country, but it's looking more like a Middle Eastern or South Asian Muslim country now. That's what it's looking like, Islamic country. So I think I think it's fair to say, ladies and gentlemen, the experiment hasn't worked. And that the moral compass that these people had that led us to this point is quite clearly dysfunctional. Or, what is more the correct term, is that it's perfectly functional for what they wanted to do. It was inverted by design, because all of this was done by design. It's going to be you and me that are going to be left, you know, crying and picking up the pieces for the atrocities that are going to be coming down the line. And make no mistake, they're coming. Make no mistake, they're coming. Think the people of Kocho, for example, which I'm reading about in Nadia Murad's book at the moment, you know, their communities, just before ISIS came in, you know, they thought it wasn't going to, a lot of them thought it necessarily wasn't going to happen to them. You know, at least they weren't massively worried. You know, they're thinking, oh no, it'll be okay, it'll be okay. Yeah, and then it all of a sudden wasn't okay. So we have problems, ladies and gentlemen. We have problems, especially when you look. So this is, again, more evidence of what's going on. For example, in Llantwit Major, about 30 minutes from Cardiff, there is now they've erected a massive migrant village. So this is what it is. Whenever it is the voting bloc that they want to attract, they can move mountains for them in many instances, quite literally, with how much of the green land they've had to cut back to make room for these accommodations, right? They can move mountains for people when they want to. So think about when your politician says that they're trying to make the best for you, and every single turn it comes up with the actually being worse in many instances. What they try to do ends up being worse for you. It's being done by design, because this shows that they can move mountains when they want to. With your tax money, right, with this nation's tax money that we're forced to pay under threat of legal penalty and being pursued by police and being thrown in prison and all the rest of it, right, which is, at the end of the day, what people want, because then if those people, you know, particularly men, are out of the way, then they can bring in all these other men that are able to do whatever the fuck they want, right, provided the politician gets the vote. They don't care. They don't care what happens to your daughter. They don't care what happens to your sister. They don't care what happens to your mother. They don't care how they ruin your communities and all of these things, right? They don't care about the fact that they're shitting on the side of the streets and pissing in doorways and all of this stuff, right? They don't care about any of that. They don't care about any of that. They care about a cross at the ballot box. So at least then they can still they can show this, this illusion to the rest of the world that they're a democratic paradise, right? But this shows, ladies and gentlemen, what happens and how they can move mountains when they want to. So here you go. This is the video from Llantwit Major. Oh, sorry, ladies and gentlemen. There we go. I'm going to turn it on mute anyway. I know that the music's not coming through at the moment anyway. But you can see here that this massive accommodation block, what looks to be like some sort of frigging coliseum being built in the background. All of this stuff didn't come for free. This wasn't free, right? It's cost a hell of a lot of fucking money to excavate the area, to get the materials in, to build it, labor costs, all of these things, right? Just shows when it's people they actually want to attract, which in many instances are not the Welsh people, it's foreigners who they're trying to bring in to replace us. I don't care how racist or whatever that sounds. They can move mountains for them, and they will move mountains for them. When it's you? No, of course not. And who are the people that they're trying to attract, right? Who are the people that they're trying to attract? That's a valid concern, right? Oh, hang on, ladies and gentlemen, my tabs have disappeared. Okay, so we had a couple of technical issues here, but we're all good. So again, who are the people that they're trying to attract? Mind you, then it's not the Welsh people. Who is it? Well, obviously people coming in from outside, bringing alien customs and stuff like that, to the extent where some of them can't even outright say whether they control themselves around kids. All right, now you might have just seen a little jump cut there, ladies and gentlemen. That's because in that point where I was speaking, I phrased something very wrong, and I wanted to just take this time just to rephrase it a bit quick to make sure I get the point across. So this Muslim was asked by Kelly directly, can you control yourself around children? And he cannot bring himself to even just say yes. And really, that's the only answer to this question. The biggest point is, if this question even needs to be asked, Okay, that's red flag warning bells going off, number one, right? If that question even needs to be asked. But then B, if the person cannot even bring himself, straight up to just say, yes, what the fuck is this question? Who the hell do you think that I am? If somebody asks you this question, you typically get very angry, right? But no, it's constant deflection. It's constant obfuscation, all of this stuff, right? This is the kind of people that the government are targeting. And I'm sorry if that upsets you, if that upsets your, liberal sensibilities and stuff like that, and your beliefs and such, but it is nonetheless true. Here is an example of it that is one example of hundreds of thousands, if not millions at this point.
I'm talking about 12 and 13-year-old girls who were groomed and raped. You're talking... Yeah. Right, so where's the nakedness about paedophiles coming from?
You're against... I'm speaking...
Can you control yourself around children?
Sorry?
Do you control yourself around children? There's a naked child. Can you control yourself not to rape them?
It doesn't have to be about...
Can you control yourself around a child?
It's not about...
Can you control yourself around a child?
The environment we're in.
Can you control yourself around a child?
There you go. They're said and done.
Can you?
Can this whole country?
Can you?
Can this whole country?
You have to control yourself.
Is it just me, or is it everyone else?
Every man.
But that's not just me. Every man.
Every man.
Every man.
And how
Control yourself.
how do you know what's inside their heart? How do you know their control? Do you believe this man here is controlling himself? How do you know what's going on?
Well, the thing is, when you know a little bit about religion, what people believe, what they feel is good and not good, about their moral compasses and all of this stuff, you can make a lot of well-educated judgments and guesses, ladies and gentlemen. If you know someone is a Muslim and you know they follow the example of the Prophet Muhammad, and you know a little bit about Muhammad's relations with a little young girl known as Aisha, where Muhammad being seen as the perfect example of how to be a man and how to carry yourself on this earth, right? And he married a young girl at 6 and consummated the marriage, i.e. he boned her at 9, then you are. And you think that this man is a good person to follow. You think that this man who killed hundreds in single days, right, that was conquesting all up and down the Middle East and from Arabia and all of these things, right? Was raping, pillaging, committing some of the biggest atrocities we've ever seen. And then his followers went on to commit some of the biggest atrocities we've ever seen in his name, right? And in the name of Allah. And then that spawned the Crusades and all of this stuff, right? Because there was a call from, because of the Seljuk Turks, they were going all up and down, raping, pillaging Christian holy lands. And when they got to the holy lands themselves, that was what spawned the call for the Crusades. Crusades were defensive. Crusades were a defense. If anything, we're commonly told the narrative that the Crusades were, an offensive. I suppose you can say that they were, as in they went to the Holy Lands from somewhere else. But it was to defend lands that were already Christian lands that had been taken over. All right? How do you know what's going on inside his heart, he asks. Well, your moral code is there, and the things that you believe are morally good or morally bad are ultimately going to come from your religious philosophy, right? If we know a little bit about what your religion teaches, we can make some good estimations on what you believe is good, what you believe is bad, and as a result, your actions, words, etc., that are going to follow from that. Okay? And these things happen in enough number and enough instance, and then you start to form stereotypes. And that's why I say we're not allowed to stereotype anymore. We're not allowed to stereotype because stereotypes point to uncomfortable truths usually. If a stereotype, the stereotype exists. A person like this, for example, of similar ethnicity and similar, same religious philosophy, that, they're going to go onto a plane and then all of a sudden that plane might not make it to the ground in the same way that it left the ground, right? Now, is part of that going to be some, I suppose you could say racism or whatever on the part of some? Sure. But a lot of people that would have that concern, simply have that concern because they've seen how many examples of that thing have happened in the past, and that the people who've done it are very proud of it, and that other people from this person's same ethnic and religious enclave support it and glorify it and are happy when those people die. And then you think, maybe this could be me. Actually, no, stereotypes are not always a bad thing. Stereotypes are not always a bad thing. But this is the thing. These are who our government wants here. Why? Why? Because they'll vote for more government. They'll vote for more government. They'll vote for more welfare state. And they'll give more power to the government to the point where they get here in large enough number and they will vote the government out and replace it with a government of their own. Either way, you, the regular British person, get shafted. You get shafted by your own government first, and then you're going to get shafted by the foreign government that comes in once your own government gets shafted. So again, needs to stop. Needs to stop. And tells you need to know when you have, for example, this is from the Daily Mail now. Remember Lucy Connolly? Remember Lucy Connolly, who's still in prison at the moment for a social media post that she made, right? Well, there was a migrant that has entered the UK from Cairo, Egypt. And this is actually from January last year. A man by the name of Osama al-Haddad, who's 26 years old. And he entered the UK with grotesque child abuse videos. And he was spared jail and deportation. Immigration officers uncovered the material, including depraved footage of a man having sex with a goat, when they searched his mobile during asylum screening. The Yemen native, 26, originally came to the UK on a student visa. So many of these things have now been weaponized to bring these people to the UK because they want more votes, right? Student visas, in many ways, the higher education system is just another form of immigration facilitation in many instances now. And that was the case for me. That was the case for me in many instances, because sometimes when I went to university, you'd walk around the campus, and again, I wouldn't know how to think about it at the time. And this is not me espousing hate to any individual that was on that campus or anything like that whatsoever, but it would oftentimes feel like a foreign place. It would oftentimes feel like a foreign place. So because a lot of the people there, especially on certain times of the day when you just be walking through, you just notice a lot of these people are distinctly not Welsh or not British. And it does just feel like a foreign place. Apparently the Houthis were seeking out his father, and then that's why he claimed asylum. He's also under pressure by the Houthis to join their army, and claimed he is not able to return to Yemen because of fear of repercussions for refusing to fight. He admitted to 3 counts of making indecent photos of children and 1 count of making a pseudo-photograph of a child. He claimed to have no sexual interest in children, that the images were sent to him by a friend on WhatsApp. You think why he still had them, even though WhatsApp in many instances automatically downloads things, which you can turn that setting off, by the way. You can turn that setting off so that it doesn't. When you knew about these things, why did you not just delete them straight away? If this would be something, if I got sent that, you just delete it straight away. Be like, I want nothing to do with this, whatever the hell this fucking is, and if anything, probably block that person. Why do you have friends sending you photos of these indecent photos of children? Not exactly a good friend. Maybe you shouldn't be associating with this person. He was sentenced to 30 weeks, suspended for a year, and was also made subject to sexual harm prevention order for 10 years and 150 hours of unpaid work. And then when he left the court, there's this photo of him, which I'll pull up now. There's this photo of him giving the thumbs up to the camera. There's this photo of him giving the thumbs up to the camera. So this is model voter for your Western governments, ladies and gentlemen. For your Welsh government, for your Scottish government, for your English government, for your Irish government. Model voter. Model voter right here. And it just goes to show the blatant double standard. Just goes to show the blatant double standard. Good people, many instances. Again, Lucy Connolly, a lot of people turned on her when they found out that her family, I believe it was was part of some resettlement schemes, I believe, for people coming from Nigeria and places like that. I believe it was. And a lot of people towards the nationalist side kind of turned on her at that point, saying that, oh, she's where she deserves to be. Rescind all support for her. I don't go that far because she's in prison for speech crime. Okay, she's in prison for speech crime, regardless if you support what she did or not. She's in prison for speech crime. Okay, so she should still be having a support in that regard, right? A lot of people then will go more and go towards the really far end of the other side of the spectrum. They're also against free speech for their own ideological ends, right? So again, that's where you're seeing that the two sides are not necessarily, when you get to the most extreme ends of it, are not too different. And you then have criminals like this, disgusting, heinous criminals like this, giving the thumbs up and walking free from court. And you have a mother who's taking care of her family is in jail. You know, you see images of the court when they're crying when their sentences are held down, given down and stuff like that, because they're innocent people. They're innocent people because the crimes they've been convicted of are not crimes, right? They're the ones, their families are torn apart, and they're the ones left with the tears of a broken society. There's something wrong about a society where you have a native mother crying as she go into, prison, for example, going to prison for something which she said on social media, and a foreign child sex criminal, person with child abuse images on their phone, and all the other things, the grooming gangs, all of these other things, right? Examples like Hugh Edwards, right? Examples like Hugh Edwards going free for all of the indecent images that he had. They get to walk free. But a mother, for something she said on social media, is rotting in prison right now. Just have a little think about the society we live in and whether you want this to continue. Have a little think about the police. So this is an article that came out 2 days ago. Updated yesterday. Going back to what we talked about at the start of this episode with the grooming gang stuff. 5 women, I believe it is now, have also come forward. Women who were exploited in the ROTHERHAM grooming gangs. Stating that it was actually police that attacked them as well. So it wasn't just these actual criminals. It was police were engaging in the sexual abuse as well. So this is from the BBC. 5 women who were exploited by grooming gangs in Rotherham as children say they were also abused by officers in the town at the time. One says she was raped from the age of 12 by a serving South Yorkshire police officer in a marked car. He would threaten to hand her back to the gang if she did not comply. She said, in a world where you were being abused so much, being raped once by a police officer is a lot easier than multiple rapes by the gang. And I think he knew that, she tells the BBC. So the police car, the yellow, the fluorescent green and blue and white spotted cars, usually when you see those things, you see them as a symbol of protection, of dominion that's been given to them, of protecting and serving the public of their constituency. And then you have members of that you got to think, have they been put in those positions deliberately that are now going and harming some of the most vulnerable in the society that they are supposed to protect above all? Irreparably harming them in those very vehicles and in those very uniforms that they put on that gives them that badge of protect and serve. They're using that force, they're using that charge which was given them to do good, to do evil. I don't think in many instances, in many areas of this country, there's no saving the police at this point now. There's no saving the police. Makes you wonder now, though, why are our government trying to get so many, why are they trying to do so many foreign drives for police officers? Because the good ones of this country will leave. They won't abide by this. They won't go with this. They'll leave. But then that leaves a gap to be filled. If anything, they want those gaps to be filled. They want those good people to leave. This is the thing. This is how you know we're dealing with true evil. We're dealing with true evil, far bigger than any one of us, far bigger than any individual. You got to think, no human on their own could ever think up with something like this, something so evil, but something so clever. Do everything you can to simply make the good people leave. To make the good people leave, right? So that you can get even more evil people in. And you can do it under the guise of making yourself look good because you're giving job opportunities to underrepresented minorities, you know, to underprivileged people. And the people leaving, they were far-right fascists anyway. Because they didn't want to be part of an organization that facilitated rape against children in the name of justice. We have seen written accounts from these women, plus testimony from 25 other victims of grooming gangs. Some of those women saying that corrupt police officers worked alongside gangs or failed to act on child sexual exploitation. At least 1,400 children were abused by men in Rotherham between 1997 and 2013. And that was from Professor Alexis J. in 2014. I've talked about this as well, that about between 2.4 and 4% of the population were responsible for nearly two-thirds of the crimes. There needs to be a cull at this point. There needs to be a cull. We've allowed this wound to fester and get infected so much that the only thing that we can do now in order to save anything, to save our society, anything like that, is to start amputating. Is to start cutting the limb off. Otherwise, the infection is only going to spread further. Antibiotics are not going to do anything at this point. Antibiotics are not going to do anything at this point. Because you've let so many people in many instances, you've let so many people in. They've shown they're actively going to facilitate this. They're actively going to do good, use good to do evil. Use a symbol of good to do evil. Both people of this nation and also those of not. That no matter how you try to get people in to try and teach them about all the sensitivity trainings, all of this bullshit white liberal woman HR stuff, right? Thinking you can save everyone. Oh, I can change them, I can save them. Maybe you can't. Maybe you can't. Maybe you're not powerful enough. Maybe you're not strong enough to save them. Maybe they need something bigger. Someone more powerful to save them. Who even just at the very hint of that name, which you guys know what I'm referring to, that will cause a liberal HR lady to shriek like the devil, right? Patriarchy, feminism, oppression. But maybe you can't, maybe you don't have the facilities to do anything about this. And maybe everything you're trying to do about it is making it worse. Maybe everything you're trying to do about it is making it worse. At this point, with the police especially, and I've actually reached out to somebody, I'm hoping to get them on the podcast. I'm hoping they see my message and respond to it soon. Let's get them on the podcast, talk about this, an ex-police officer. So I'm starting to think now, a lot of them, they, you know, if they're like an infected arm. If British society is like the body, these are like a truly infected arm that's already spread to the rest of the body. But if anything, there's no saving it now. In many instances, there's no saving it. As much as I'd like to, there's no saving it. The police have done so much evil. And police have done so much evil It makes you think we shouldn't give them the benefit of the doubt and think that they're going to do good now, in many instances. And all this happens when you don't have good deterrents in place. The good deterrents were against good police officers coming forward and actually doing their jobs to try and help children. That's where the good deterrents were. Because they'd have their character assassinated. They'd be doxxed. They'd have their address given away so that people who would do them harm for the things that they'd say would go and do them harm. And all of the things which they'd seen happening to other families would then happen to their own. That's what I mean. This runs so deep. The infection runs so deep. That might not even be worth saving it. Might not even be worth saving it anymore. And these things happen every single day. You know, girl 17, this article was published 2 days ago in the Express, raped in a train toilet at 6 a.m. as 30-year-old man was arrested. No description in the article, I don't believe, and no description from the police, but I have heard people throwing out accusations that that it wasn't somebody of native British descent. A teenage girl was raped inside the cubicle of a train toilet. This really highlights to me why a lot of the people, when I have, this relates to something else, a lot of people with the trans debate, for example, that even with communal toilets anyway, this obviously stuff can happen, but when people are getting up in arms about the trans stuff, that men masquerading as women going to go into the toilets, for example, at least when you had the rules before, there was this unwritten social code. If a man walked in there, no matter what they'd say, they'd be, you know, turned around and said to leave, right? And now with the massive psyop that's been put into women's heads, whereby they actually believe that this man masking around as a woman is a woman, and all it takes in this instance, like it happened with this train and obviously like this, but you leaving doors open unnecessarily, all it takes is this person who's likely doing it to get at women because of some perverted fantasy and stuff like that, because they are a sexual degenerate or potentially even a sexual predator, is that they'll follow you into the toilet and they'll just, you know, push you towards the back, they'll lock the door and you got nowhere else to go. And then, as I said before, with regards to the whole feminism thing where it assumes that men and women are perfectly equal, the differences between men and women will become perfectly apparent in that moment. They'll become perfectly apparent in that moment. It makes me sick even just thinking about it. Makes me sick even just thinking about the ordeal that this woman had to go through. This 17-year-old had to go through. British Transport Police have launched an investigation into sexual assault and rape in southeast London. No surprise it was in southeast London. Multicultural paradise where the king, so-called king, said that Donald Trump's remarks on Sadiq Khan being a terrible mayor in a city now that now has a rape every hour, a rape reported every hour, right? 24 rapes a day. 24 rapes a day. That the king comes out and says that he's appalled by Donald Trump's marks. Well, a lot of us are appalled by the Grand Mufti that the king has turned into as well. And like I said, I think it's over, monarchists. I think it's over. The monarchy died with Liz. The monarchy died with Liz, I think. A 17-year-old girl was on the platform towards Abbey Wood at Woolwich Arsenal Railway Station at around 6:05 a.m. on Saturday, 19th July, when she was sexually assaulted by a man. They boarded a train towards Abbey Wood at around 6:00. So she was already getting attacked before she got on the train. She was already getting attacked before she got on the train. Soon afterwards, she was raped in a carriage toilet. So just after 6:10 a.m. The man left the station at Abbey Wood while the girl continued alone to Slade Green Railway Station and later reported the incident to police. A 30-year-old man was arrested on July 24th on suspicion of rape, taken into custody, and he was later released on bail, which is fairly standard for this country. It's fairly standard for this country. I suppose at that time, you know, you can't necessarily prove at that point that he did actually commit it. But this is the thing. Will he actually face justice for it? Will anyone actually face justice for these crimes? We've seen justice denied time and time and time again in cases like this. Will they actually face justice? Highly doubtful. Highly doubtful. Of course, it'll always be a case of lessons were learned. Lessons were learned. Will we learn the lesson, for example, that this liberal lady on this next video refused to learn, seemingly? A Sky News reporter, as this guy who's in prison, he's a prisoner of ISIS, He's a prisoner of ISIS. This is a video that surfaced 2 days ago. It's a video of ISIS, and Sky News are doing this interview and cannot get it into their heads that ISIS is just regular Islam, that there is no such thing as a ISIS law and then Muslim law. Extreme applications of Sharia law is a term she uses. She's like, and the guy's just like, no, there's just Sharia. There's just Sharia law, and Muslims live by Sharia law. There's no extreme version of Sharia law. It's all Sharia law. It shows the ignorance of the West on full display. Sadly, does appear to be driven by women like this. I don't like saying that, because I know I'm going to get crucified for it. But it's true. It's true. A lot of us now have seen this coming for a long time. A lot of us know that there is now no difference, as we were told and lied to time and time again. There is no difference, you know, between an ideology of the terror groups and the ideology of the rest of the society. There's no difference. There's no difference. It's all Islam. It's all Islam. And unless we understand that and then understand what we need to do about it, there's a very good chance you and me are going to be in the exact same position that this guy is in this video.
Would you like to still see an ISIS-style caliphate?
I like to say caliphate there, but I don't know what ISIS-style caliphate is.
Well, the one that we saw between 2014 and 2019 was an ISIS caliphate, where Yazidis were taken as sex slaves, homosexuals were executed, extreme application of Sharia law.
There's no such thing as extreme application of Sharia. There's Sharia law, and then there's no Sharia law. As Muslims, we should follow the Sharia law.
You still believe in the ISIS ideology?
I don't know what the ISIS ideology is.
Where is the other version?
There you go. So there you go. Put a pause there a minute. You still believe in the ISIS ideology. That's what she says. She won't call it Islam. Won't call it Islam because these people have it twisted up in their minds that there's difference between these groups. And sure, there's differences between how societies function that claim to be Islamic societies. We'd argue that societies that are not going and trying to spread the caliphate, bring Islam to the world, all of these things, right? You know, they claim to be Muslim societies and stuff like that. Not actually doing a very good job of being Muslim societies. It's kind of funny when you see Muslim extremists in this country, like Dili Hussein, for example, saying that I can't remember what he said, the UAE is like the US of the Middle East, as a criticism, right? It was something like that. It was something like that because it's not so radical and seemingly wants to, in many instances, be more like a Western nation whilst still trying to hold on to like its Islamic culture and some Islamic norms and stuff like that, right? They'll criticize their own countries for not being extreme enough, because you could actually make the argument that they're not following the ideology and the person that they claim to, right? You could actually make the claim that they're not actually doing what they're supposed to by being this massive warmongering, you know, trying to spread the caliphate by the sword. You know, in many instances, the extreme, you know, Palestinian terror groups like Hamas and, what was it, the PLO, or Palestinian Authority, and Hezbollah and Houthis, and who else we got? Muslim Brotherhood, we were talking about here, ISIS, all of these things, right? You could, as I believe the son of Hamas said, that all of these things are just Islam, right? Could make the argument that they are following Islam better. That they are following Islam better. They're actually following in the steps of their prophet. But yet, people like this Sky News reporter, they can't get their heads around that. They can't get their heads around that. Because if they did, then that would violate this idea of multiculturalism and multicultural utopia and Islam being a religion of peace. When these people are saying, like, look, I don't get what you mean when you say that there's a difference. I don't get what you mean when you say that there's a difference. There's either Sharia law or no Sharia law. There's not an ISIS caliphate. There's an Islamic caliphate because it all ties back to Islam. It's not an ISIS caliphate. There's no such thing as extreme application of Sharia law. You either have Sharia law or you don't have Sharia law. And Muslims will always live by Sharia law. Therefore, that makes Islam and Muslims incompatible with our civilization because it's a parallel legal system. In many instances, there's the exact opposite of what our legal system and is the exact opposite of what our legal system stands for. And any nation with parallel legal systems is on the route to collapse anyway. Is on the route to collapse anyway. But the biggest thing is with this now is that what are our political class focused on? What are our political class focused on? Obviously, they're focused on people talking about this. They're focused on people talking about this. They don't want you talking about this. It's why they brought in the online harms bill. That's why now they're trying to criminalize VPNs, for example, and stuff like that, right? Same way that they do in North Korea and all these other places, right? Because they don't want people knowing the truth. They don't want people knowing the truth. The person that posted this next video, which I'll go through now, I haven't actually watched it yet, says every time you use a VPN, a child dies, because now they're trying to make the case that this online harms bill or online safety act, whatever it is, all about the children, right? It's all about the children, despite the fact that one of the biggest things it's censoring. It's about the children, but it's censoring rape gang victim testimony. No, it was never about safety. It was never about anything like that. It was never about the children. It was always about control and curtailing free speech, as we talked about last time. Video coming to you now, ladies and gentlemen.
For everybody who's out there thinking of using VPNs, let me just say to you directly, verifying your age keeps a child safe, keeps children safe in our country. So let's just not try and find a way around. Just prove your age, make the internet safer for children, make it a better experience for everyone. That's surely what we should aspire to in this country. For everybody.
So there we go. Blatant admission. Again, they tried to dress it up. They tried to make it seem as though they're concerned about the children, but they, blatantly censor rape gang testimony and try and censor footage coming out of or migrant hotels and stuff like that, where they're actively trying to bus in people that put children in danger. No, the biggest person putting children in danger is you not verifying your age, you not giving every single element of your privacy or whatever it is over to us as the regime that are going to take care of you. Yeah, that's why Ronald Reagan said there's nothing more terrifying than somebody from the government turning up to your house and saying, yeah, I'm from the government, I'm here to help. But no, it's you, the person who wants actual privacy when they browse online and stuff like that. No, it's you. See, the innocent person that just wants to remain a private citizen, not a global citizen, right, or a public citizen. Yeah, you are the problem. You are the ones making children unsafe. You were the ones exposing them to all this stuff. Not us doing all of this heinous stuff through the public school system. Not us trying to educate your children and saying that they're sexual from birth and all of these things, right? That they have sexual and reproductive rights, but parents don't have parental rights and all stuff like that. No, it's you, the VPN user. Of course it is. I'm proud to say I'm using a VPN at this moment in time. Very, very proud of that. Who knows, maybe I'll get a knock at my door. I've got a feeling a knock at my door is coming soon anyway. So, yeah, but this is the thing. This is where the regime always focus in it. They don't want to tackle the problem. It's the thing. People are constantly asking it, well, why is this happening? Why aren't they tackling the problem? Or what do we need to do to tackle the problem? You've got to understand now, ladies and gentlemen, surely that, again, I know that I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, right? And I'm kind of preaching to the choir here. But obviously they don't want this problem solved. They don't want this problem solved. They want to use every single thing. They want to use every single aspect of the problem as a greater foothold for more totalitarianism. As soon as you realize that the whole point of everything that they're doing is slavery, everything makes sense. Everything then all of a sudden clicks into place and makes sense. Until you realize that, you'll never understand it. Until you realize that, you'll never understand it. Until you realize just how evil, just how controlling, just how manipulative your government is being on purpose, because that is the goal, you'll never understand why they're doing what they're doing, and that it's not incompetence, but that it is malice. And anybody who talks about it is the problem as well. So what happened in Cincinnati recently with the Cincinnati Music Festival, if you heard, was that there was a mob of black people had horrifically beaten and abused a few white people. I believe it was a white family, and I believe there was a woman that suffered. And again, a lot of it, again, I'm looking through the comments trying to find the photo where I'm looking at the moment. It says, due to local laws, we are temporarily restricting this content until X estimates your age. I'm just trying to find the photo of the aftermath of the woman, because the woman, one of the women in particular, was, she's not looking good. Just trying to see if anybody's got the thing. All right, bear with me 2 seconds, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so I've just found a photo, ladies and gentlemen. So here is a photo of the lady. She was, I believe, put on the ground and stomped on, I believe it was. These are the injuries that she sustained. So for those of you who are listening, not watching, she has a very, very noticeable black eye. We're talking like it's going up around all the eye. Right, you know, you think she's taken a massive shot directly to the face, and you know, all bruising and cut around her lip and stuff like that as well. Nose appears to be swollen, cheek appears to be broken as well, just underneath here. Little marks on the other side, but we're seeing this from only the one side, so it's quite difficult to see what's going on the other side. So what happened was in Cincinnati, there was a massive brawl that broke out. From what we understand, for racially motivated reasons. So obviously you spent an entire generation, multiple generations, telling them that one side was always a victim and the other side is always the oppressor. The groups that you've targeted are the groups that are responsible for, you know, all of your problems and all stuff like that. And I'll just show you a little bit of footage from it as well now. So this is the kind of stuff that was going on in Cincinnati that we're talking about. So just turn the volume down just a little bit. So you see here, the guy gets jumped, and a lot of these instances, they're like about 4 or 5 on one. So you see they're just stamping him on the ground. And we're seeing this because the media didn't cover it initially. You've not just got men involved, it's women as well. So you want women are equally culpable in all of this. It's the thing with equal rights come equal responsibility. So this is the kind of stuff that we're seeing, right? And it's forming a pattern. It's forming a pattern of racially motivated hatred manifesting in now violence. Not just manifesting as words or anything like that, but manifesting as violence, because you've spent a whole time bending over backwards for criminals, bending over backwards for horrible people, trying to scapegoat the people who are responsible for their problems onto these other people. And then you can't be surprised then, as Matt Walsh said in his show the other day, you can't be surprised when people act on that. People act on that, and then people get seriously hurt or killed. We've seen that time and time and time again. But the Cincinnati police chief, obviously the problem was not the fact that a black mob went out and attacked a bunch of white people. The problem was the fact that the media was showing it. That's always the problem. As I said, the problem here is not the fact that young children are being raped en masse by foreigners, that the government are actively housing foreigners that are going then out and doing these heinous things towards children that are actively putting us in danger. No, the problem is the VPN user. The problem in this instance is the media covering it. That's always the problem. The truth is always a problem. For those who want to continually peddle lies, the truth will always be a problem.
Another topic I want to cover real quick.
Get on with it.
Social media and journalism and the role it plays in this incident. And yes, guys, that's you. That is you. Social media,
good start,
that we've seen does not depict the entire incident. That is one version of what occurred. At times, social media and mainstream media and their commentaries are a misrepresentation of the circumstances surrounding any given event.
The funniest thing is, right? The funniest thing is, so it's complete obfuscation, the fact they didn't obviously have the situation under control. They could never control the situation. The funniest thing is that all of the mainstream news organizations, where you're seeing the people turning on each other now, people on the same side turning on each other, the mainstream news organizations are usually bending over backwards to try and cover for things like this, saying that it is a, white privilege, or it's the fault of systemic oppression, all of these. He's trying to justify these things happening, right? Trying to turn, victims into oppressors and trying to turn oppressors into victims. That's what they're trying to do. And now you have the police chief come out and saying that try to blame the media, right? Just where they know they're culpable. They know that everything that they've done has led to this. They know that the improper policing and improper reporting in the media has all led to this. But now they're all turning on each other, because when the thing inevitably happens that they say doesn't happen, we're always talking about white fragility, white privilege, white this, white that, systemic oppression, yada, yada, yada. Well, when you have things like this happen, it's all can't happen. You can't be racist against a white person, all of these things. Whatever the thing that happens, that keeps happening, that they're telling us isn't happening or doesn't happen, again, they have nowhere else to turn. It's kind of funny to watch them spin their wheels and try and get out of it, just to cover for their own incompetence. But that's the thing. Now, not only incompetence, but malice is putting people in danger. People could have lost their lives. In many instances in this country, people have lost their lives by police incompetence and by police outright neglect and malice. And again, it's where everything we're seeing now is not just a phenomenon in the US or the UK. It's all over. It's all over. And ultimately, the only thing that's going to change it is public pressure. Public pressure. Public pressure, for example, on the Plaid Cymru leader, Runab Iorwerth, who, again, I believe he still has me blocked. Does he still have me blocked? Yes, of course he does. Awesome. And there's a screenshot commented of something which I believe is either on X or on Facebook here. And he just outright tries to lie about the Nation of Sanctuary plan. So, again, if you think that Plaid is anything but an anti-Wales party, I'd hate to break it to you, but you're wrong. They try to market themselves as the party of Wales. Is literally what Plaid Cymru means. But they're not. They're anything but the sort. They are an anti-Wales party. They're a party of foreigners. They are a party of foreign bodies, so like the WEF, the EU, United Nations, World Health Organization, all of this stuff, right? So they're an anti-Wales party. And he commented on somebody's post, I believe it was, saying, hi, it was a person known as Gavin Jones. He says, hi, out of interest, do you know what the UK-wide nation or cities of sanctuaries concept is? Clue, it's not about inviting more migrants. Just outright lies, because that is exactly what it is about. That is exactly what it is about. If it wasn't about inviting more migrants, why would we be targeting 1.5 million refugees in Gaza? Why would we say we have to make more? If it wasn't about inviting more migrants, why would we be saying we have to make more safe routes or safe legal routes, whatever it is, for people to enter here? That's literally the entire point. He thinks you're so stupid. He thinks you're so stupid that he'll literally say this thing that is literally about and is all in all but title about getting more people from foreign nations to come here because we want their votes, is not about getting more people to come here because we want their votes. You have to, and again, just the fact that we've gone to the point now where he feels that he can get away with this. He feels that he can get away with this, right? Imagine how stupid he thinks you are. And the guy says, hi, I appreciate the reply. Yes, I do know what the concept stands for. It's a nation that fosters a culture and welcomes migrants. Yeah, so it's good to see people not being, not seeing right through it. But honestly, just a nation of sanctuary. Who do you think of when you think of a sanctuary? You think of people coming to this place because they need help in some way. That's what they want to make you think. That's what they want to make you think. That's why they're using the term. But no, they're using the term to cover up to try and make it seem virtuous, to try and make it seem they're targeting vulnerable people when these people are not vulnerable, but they're bringing them here because they want their votes. That's what they vote. That's what they want. They don't care about the Welsh person anymore. They're putting all of their eggs in the basket of foreigners because they're banking on people coming here in enough number. They're banking on our birth rates declining so much and foreign numbers increasing so much so that we cannot vote our way out of it anymore, and they no longer have to be accountable to us. They already don't feel as though they're accountable to us. They want to make that a permanent reality. And that's the way they're doing it, by getting more people in and incentivizing us to have less kids, incentivizing Welsh people not to have families. Through feminism, through having women in the workplace so that they can't take care of kids, so that everybody is dependent on the state in a 2-income household, all of these things, right? It's because they don't want people of this nation having families. Less people on one side, less voting power. And they want the people who they are banking on their votes, so they think that they're banking on their votes to have more power than us. It's treason. It's treason. But Wales, I think, might be doomed anyway. At least in terms of its faith and Anglican communion. So the last thing to touch on today that really encapsulates how much of an embarrassment Wales is on the international stage at the moment. And everything. Worst performing NHS, some of the most draconian speech laws, you know, prosperity at an all-time low in many instances, relative to history, obviously. You now have an archbishop, quote unquote, of the Anglican communion in Wales. Lesbian Cherry Van has been appointed as the first female and openly gay Archbishop of Wales in the Anglican communion. Now, let me just tell you, ladies and gentlemen, if you walk into a church and you see this, if you walk into a church and you see something like this, get up and leave the church. Get up and leave the church. Now, again, you can have your umbrage with religion. You can have your umbrage with Christianity, right? You can say that Christianity is evil, bigoted, whatever it is, all of your subjective claims about it that more often than not are untrue and are based on things that you've been told that are not true about it, all of these things, right? So, in fact, it's been the single biggest thing that's led to prospering in the last 2,000 years that we've ever seen, really. Largely because it was patriarchal. I hope I offend a bunch of feminists in saying that. But you should at least understand, and you can at least understand that if a church is going to be a church, they should stand for those ethics and those morals, right? And those teachings. So you say you should have a government that works for its people, right? And that when a government doesn't work for its people and starts being accountable to itself, you see a problem, right? You live in tyranny. Well, what we're seeing now is just how many churches, to the extent of the churches that have now given themselves over to Satan, that have given themselves over to evil. Because this is in no way Christian whatsoever, obviously. And this is where we now have the true, true indication coming up more and more and more that, I don't know how you can say it, but that these institutions that have let the teachings from history, teachings from antiquity, go by the wayside, they're not for very much longer. And we're now seeing who they are really accountable to. But it is the mark of a dying nation. It is the mark of a dying nation. And as you said about this, I was like, great to see that my beloved country is being made a mockery on the world stage yet again. Thing is, this ends when we say it does, and by doing what is required. I just don't think people are going to allow themselves to do what is required. I think there's going to be two things. There's going to be two things that get in the way of us truly reversing course, truly saving things at this point. pride and ignorance. When you bring those two together, you have prideful ignorance. That is a truly devastating combo for both somebody individually, but now we're seeing how it's manifesting on a national and international community level scale. That our country is being destroyed. And when you take away God, something is going to fill its place. And what's taken its place in this instance, it's not only government. So when you remove God, government is basically the next step down. But now see, when you remove God, it's a little bit like when you watch a lot of interviews with exorcists, for example, and say if we manage to get the demons out of you, for example, unless you accept God, they're going to come back in and they're going to bring 7 more demons even worse than themselves. All right. Now, regardless of whether you believe in that stuff or not, but you can see what's happened here. We've removed God. So now what have we allowed in? We thought God was evil. Woe to those who call good evil and evil good. We call God evil and we removed him. At least in terms of the prominence that we gave him, at least in terms of not loving him and not worshipping him and things like this, right? We removed him. Now what's taken his place? Something a hell of a lot worse. And there's the answer for what we need to do. That'll do it for today, guys. Have a good morning, afternoon, evening, night, wherever you are. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I'll catch up with you next time. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you for watching. Hwyl fawr. We'll see you next time. Obviously, if you found this useful, please share it, please like it, please subscribe, all of these things. If you're on YouTube, or follow me on Spotify, follow me on Rumble, all of these things. Thank you very much, guys. I'll hopefully see you again soon. Godspeed.